So my role at the time, I was General Manager of Ngāti Awa Group Holdings. So I headed up the commercial arm of the iwi investment company. So we had a window of 3 days between when the farm came on the market to when the tender proposal was required. So in 3 days, we pulled together a group of 5 like-minded trusts. We did the feasibility, we did the financial feasibility all within that short period of time. We met with all the trustees, we got firm agreement, we submitted our proposal. And then from woe to go, it took 3 days and it was done. So this was in 2008, so at a period when farming prices were at an all-time high. And my understanding is that the price we paid is still almost a record price for the area. But the price itself is almost insignificant in the sense that we bought this land with a view that we're going to own this for 100, 200 years plus. Why did we go with the joint venture? I mean, Ngāti Awa had the resources to purchase and acquire the farm by itself, but it was an opportunity to share this with other land trusts. So individually, it was probably out of the reach of each of our land trusts, but from an iwi, from a Ngāti Awa perspective, it was a prime opportunity to prove to ourselves, that we can work together, that we've got robust business processes. And there was no benefit for one entity to own it outright when we knew that there were a number of entities that were interested in getting into this industry. We talk a lot about kotahitanga, about collaboration, about whanaungatanga. This was one way of enacting that discussion into action. So it was a win-win situation to everyone. How do we put it together? We got the initial meeting was with the respective chairs of the trusts. We brought them all together. We outlined the opportunity. We talked about the structure in terms of how it can be pulled together. We talked about the price. And then it was very much a values-based discussion, a principle-based discussion on this is how this farm sits in the bigger picture of Ngāti Awa's future. And if that's something that aligns with your kaupapa and where your trust is going to, we think that we can work together and make this work. So we met with the chairs of the 5 trusts in Ngāti Awa Group Holdings. Look, there was unanimous support. We all knew that because prior to the opportunity, we've always kept in close contact. We've always got strong relationships internally. So we know what the priorities are. We know what the key drivers and objectives are. So it wasn't a very hard process, to be honest. I think the proposition spoke for itself, really. We talked about our support of Ngāti Awa working together. So we had our chairman, Sir Wiragana, was very influential in the proposal, as were all the other trustees and the other chair people. So it didn't take much influence on my behalf at all. My key role was around the structure and the finance and the technical sides of pulling together the joint venture. Yeah, the outcomes have been fantastic. On the farming front itself, it's a high-performing farm. We've essentially almost doubled the size of its operating area by bringing in the neighbouring Māori land blocks. There's potential there to replicate that model in other parts of Ngāti Awa. We've been able to utilise that same partnership approach in 2 subsequent ventures. So we set up a limited partnership following that with members of that same group to invest in private equity. Ngāti Awa has recently acquired another dairy farm utilising the same approach. So we've been able to build on that sense of partnership and collaboration. And Ngāti Awa's been able to open doors for its land trusts that may not have otherwise been opened. And that's the biggest success, I believe. So people see it as a dairy farm, I see it as an opening, and it's an opening that we've been able to build on in terms of that continuity, that whanaungatanga amongst working with ourselves. What advice would I give? I think, look, it's up to each iwi and rohe to go through their own process. What really worked for us is that we had those existing relationships prior to the opportunity. You know, and we've built up that relationship over years and years. So, and that allowed us to move quite quickly in the process. So that dialogue, that ongoing communication is absolutely critical. You know, that sharing of principles and values. So for a lot of our people, one of the underpinning fundamentals is kaitiakitanga. So to enact kaitiakitanga, you really need to be able to control the asset. And so that's what we're able to do with this farm. This farm is one example of how we can enact aspects of kaitiakitanga. So we set very high levels for ourselves in terms of on-farm operations, in terms of water usage, and the like. You know, so one of the areas that we're still to build on is around how do we develop our people alongside the assets, so we can develop the people in a sense from a governance perspective. So we set up a completely new board, representatives from each of the 6 entities on their board, and that's one way of developing that governance, that expertise in the dairy farming context. The next stage I see is that we start to bring our people through in the workforce. So that's a challenge, and that's something that I look forward to in terms of the ideal would be that we have our own entity, our own farm and our own land run and managed by our own people. You know, and we're not too far from getting there, from my view. So we do set higher compliance sort of thresholds on ourselves in terms of water usage, and as I said, effluent management, you know, animal husbandry, and we need to set ourselves a higher benchmark. Yeah, I think it's area and development. You know, getting our younger people more involved in this agribusiness space. I think there's a lot of interest that's been developed and that continues to grow in terms of the collaboration and working with ourselves in Ngāti Awa. You know, and I can only see that getting stronger and stronger. You know, it'll open up other doors into other areas, you know, around forestry perhaps, you know, maybe even geothermal development, horticulture, cropping. You know, so Ngā Kōrua was the start of that process.